Infertility treatment? No way, we don't need that. All you need to do is take care of the household chores for the family. What? That's... I turned pale at Jack's unexpected words. It was as if he was treating me like a mere housekeeper. I spent every day holding these feelings of frustration. Then, while cleaning Jack's room, I discovered something. It was a childbirth DVD of a woman I didn't know. Who is this woman? As I was at a loss for what to do, a man named Michael appeared. I enlisted Michael's help to expose Jack's infidelity in front of our relatives. In our family, it's a tradition to gather at the main house on New Year's Eve. I made a proposal to my in-laws to get their cooperation. Can we hold this year's end-of-year gathering in the annex where we live? After I explained everything step by step, my in-laws agreed. And so, my revenge against Jack began. I am Maria, a 40-year-old housewife, married for 3 years. I married at 37 and wanted to have children soon. However, even after 3 years, I was unable to get pregnant. I married Jack, 3 years my senior, through a matchmaking arrangement. Our family is well known locally. It was a bit strange that Jack, the son of such a wealthy family, remained single until 40. But I thought we got along well and were compatible. That's why I decided to marry him without hesitation. After marriage, we started living in an annex on my in-laws' property. Eventually, we were supposed to live with my in-laws, but that seemed natural since I married the only son of a good family. My in-laws cherished me as their daughter-in-law. My father-in-law is a bit difficult, but my mother-in-law is very kind. So, I thought we would get along well. Then, as Jack wished, I quit my job and devoted myself to helping out with family chores. I've always liked helping others. I was supposed to start a happy married life, just like in my dreams. However, about a year into the marriage, Jack started to change. Initially, Jack was kind. But recently, his attitude towards me became indifferent. When he came home from work, he wouldn't even say I'm home. Instead, he would say, "Wash this and iron it," handing me his crumpled shirt. The only time he talked to me at home was to give me chores. Did I do something to offend him? While thinking this, I reflected on my actions since getting married. But I couldn't think of anything that would have angered Jack. Still concerned, I decided to talk to my mother-in-law. Jack has been cold to me lately. He doesn't talk to me except when giving chores. Did I do something wrong? When I asked, my mother-in-law smiled kindly and answered. Jack is just like his father. My husband was the same after we got married. Maybe Jack, like his father, finds it embarrassing to talk to his wife. So, it's nothing to worry about? Well, isn't that just the way it is with marriage? As time goes by, you'll come to understand each other better. Hearing my mother-in-law say that, I felt a bit relieved. My in-laws have a very good relationship now. So, I think that if Jack and I are married for many years, we'll get along well too. That's what I thought, feeling reassured. But first, if we have a child, maybe Jack will change. I've always liked kids and want to have my own soon. For that reason, I check my basal body temperature every morning and look for the best days to conceive. I've also been living a healthy lifestyle to increase my chances of getting pregnant. Still, after 3 years of marriage, there was no sign of pregnancy. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I tried to discuss it with Jack. Hey, Jack. We've been married for 3 years but still haven't had a child. I'm thinking of getting it checked out. Huh? What are you going to check? Jack asked with an indifferent face. Still, I mustered up the courage to ask. That's why I mean maybe one of us has an issue. I'm thinking of getting tested or, undergoing fertility treatment. When I bravely brought up the topic of fertility treatment, Jack looked displeased. And then said something outrageous. Infertility treatment? No way, we don't need that. All you need to do is take care of the household chores for the family. What? That's... I turned pale at Jack's unexpected words. It was as if he was treating me like a mere housekeeper. Jack, don't you want children? Your father expects an heir, after all. When I said that, Jack looked a bit troubled. It'll work out somehow. What do you mean, somehow? I asked, puzzled by Jack's words, but he didn't respond. An heir will work out somehow. I couldn't stop thinking about what Jack had said. And the meaning of those words would later be revealed in an unexpected way. I spent every day holding these feelings of frustration. Day after day, cooking, laundry, cleaning, it's a never-ending cycle. I tell myself it's natural since I'm a daughter-in-law, but the emptiness builds up. Today, I was cleaning Jack's study. There are countless books lined up here. I had to carefully remove the dust accumulated between them. Next to the bookshelf, there's a large CD rack. Since there's a gap, I have to take everything out to clean inside properly. I carefully removed the items, keeping them in order. It looked like there were DVDs on the top shelf. When I tried to take out about 20 at once, I fumbled, and they all fell down. Oh no! I have to put everything back in order. All the DVDs had fallen out of their cases, and I couldn't tell which belonged where. Jack is meticulous, so he labels both the discs and their cases. I started comparing the labels on the discs with those on the cases. Among them, one caught my eye. I didn't know the content, but it read November 30th, 2022, birth of Ethan. Ethan? Who's that? When I saw that, I remembered Jack's words. An heir will work out somehow. Thinking there might be a connection, I decided to play the DVD. I took it to the living room with the TV and put it in the DVD player. Then, I pressed the play button. What appeared was a dark room with only a bed that looked like a hospital examination table. A woman in her early 20s was lying on the bed. She was smiling at the camera. In a large pajama-like outfit, her belly was noticeably large. Apparently, she was pregnant. The woman was smiling calmly but suddenly started to moan in pain. It hurts. Jack, rub my back. Jessica, just a bit more endurance. You can do it. Could this be labor? No, what shocked me more was the man's voice rubbing her back. This voice, is it Jack? Indeed, the pregnant woman called him by that name. The pregnant woman was in apparent pain. I couldn't tell, having no experience, but it seemed like she was about to give birth. So, it was a labor waiting room. Who is this woman? She kept calling Jack's name through her labor pains. And why was Jack there by her side? After a while, a few women in white coats, who looked like midwives, entered. They were encouraging the pregnant woman to breathe properly. Then, she was moved to the delivery table, with Jack following. The next scene, after a pause in filming, was graphically showing the childbirth. The woman, Jessica, continued to call out Jack's name through her pain. Jessica, you're doing great. The head's coming out. Just a little more. Jack's excited voice echoed as well. Tears started flowing from my eyes. Jack had been cheating on me. The label's date was exactly a year ago. This means Jack had been cheating for almost 2 years. Could this DVD be conclusive evidence? But this alone doesn't prove the child is Jack's. In such a case, I would want to consult a lawyer or a private investigator. However, Jack only gives me enough money for living expenses, so I don't have much of my own. As I was at a loss for what to do, the doorbell rang. Peering at the monitor, I saw a man in his late 20s standing there. Hello, who is it? My name is Michael. Is Jack at home? The man, with a troubled look on his face. No, my husband hasn't come home yet. I see. Excuse me, but you are his wife, aren't you? May I have a moment of your time? I was curious about the man with the concerned look on his face. When I opened the front door, he respectfully handed me his business card and bowed. His name was Michael. For a moment, I felt like I had heard that name before. Actually, I wanted to ask your husband about a woman named Jessica, one of his subordinates. I reacted to the name Jessica. It was the same name as the pregnant woman from earlier. Is this Jessica, by any chance, the woman who gave birth about a year ago? To my question, Michael showed a look of surprise. Why do you ask that? Did your husband tell you about acknowledging the child? What do you mean by acknowledging? What's that about? As I pressed for answers in shock, Michael covered his mouth with his hands, as if he had said something he shouldn't have. I'm so sorry. While apologizing, he looked like he had indeed said something regrettable. I calmed Michael down and asked him to talk more. It's okay. I think I have a rough idea of what's going on. So, I won't be surprised by anything you tell me. Could you please explain? I decided to invite him in. I offered him tea, but Michael didn't touch it and sat solemnly. Then he said, almost in a whisper, she's my ex-girlfriend. Wait, so you broke up because she cheated with my husband? No, it's not like that. I was confused by Michael's response. Normally, if a girlfriend cheated with her boss, one would get angry and break up. Or confront the cheating partner. But Michael didn't seem like he was in such a state. But Jessica was pregnant with Jack's child, right? How can you say that's not the reason for your breakup? It's different. Jessica's child is actually mine. I was taken aback by Michael's sudden loud declaration. More than that, what did he mean by the child not being Jack's? You just said that Jack acknowledged the child, right? Does he know it's not his child? I don't know about that. She insists it's definitely Jack's child. But do you have proof that it's your child? Yes, I do. Michael asserted confidently. He had visited to see the child, Ethan, after his birth. He said that Ethan, as a baby, looked exactly like his own baby photos. That's why he tried to reconcile with Jessica. However, Jessica, uninterested in a life with financially unstable Michael, refused to get back together. No, it wasn't just that. Jessica insisted that Ethan was not Michael's son, but definitely Jack's. She had been two-timing them. Since then, she had Jack acknowledge Ethan and was receiving child support and living expenses from him. Jack would get angry when I asked how much he earned, replying, "Why do you need to know that?" Now it made sense. He didn't want the amount of his salary known, for that reason. I felt overwhelmed with a sense of helplessness. Michael, unable to give up on his child, had hired a private investigator. And after thorough investigation, it turned out Ethan was indeed his son. Ma'am, even if Ethan isn't your husband's child, the fact remains he cheated. And he's been silently providing money to Jessica. That can't be overlooked, right? Of course not. We agreed to join forces and settle this matter once and for all. And now, it's December. In our family, it's a tradition to gather at the main house on New Year's Eve. I made a proposal to my in-laws to get their cooperation. Can we have this year's end-of-year gathering at the annex where we live? Why's that? You know our family's gatherings involve a lot of people, Maria. Yes, I know. Preparing the meal is a big task. To get their cooperation, I had to tell the truth. I started by telling my in-laws what Michael had shared, to avoid shocking them suddenly. Then, I decided to show them the DVD. My father-in-law, eyes widening, watched in disbelief and uttered, "What is this?" My mother-in-law was also deeply shocked to see Jack accompanying an unknown woman during childbirth. I explained the plan that Michael and I had devised and asked for their help. All right. I don't know how this will go, but let's cooperate. Yes, we need to make things clear with Jack. Having my in-laws' support was reassuring. All that was left was to wait for New Year's Eve. A month passed, and it was New Year's Eve night. Our relatives gathered at our house. In the annex's living room, we set up a long table, barely big enough, and arranged the food on it. The relatives all wondered, why are we gathering here? Before we began eating, my father-in-law stood up to address everyone. Good evening, thank you for joining our family's traditional gathering. It's a bit cramped, but today, we have something important to show you, which is why we're gathered here in the young couple's annex. We don't have the equipment to play this DVD back in the main house. When my father-in-law said that, I also stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, before we dine, please watch this video. I said this, turned on the TV, and started preparing the DVD player. What is it? Some interesting video? Jack asked me with a smirking expression, unaware of the fate that awaited him. As soon as I pressed play, Jack's face froze. Suddenly, the labor waiting room appeared, with Jessica lying down. "Is this? Hey, stop it, Maria!" The relatives around us began to murmur in confusion. "What's this all about? Who's that pregnant woman?" All eyes turned to Jack. Realizing the trouble, Jack frantically searched for the DVD player's remote. But anticipating this, I had hidden the remote. When Jack realized the remote was missing and approached the DVD player, my father-in-law held him back. "Stop! Please stop!" Jack struggled to stop the playback. But my father-in-law and I firmly restrained him. "Jack, don't make it worse. Just watch quietly, Jack." Hearing his parents' words, Jack, almost in tears, fell silent. Meanwhile, the childbirth DVD continued playing. "Is this Jack's secret child? Oh my! To think someone in our family has a mistress. If this gets out, we won't be able to show our faces around here." Amid the uproar, with some relatives crying, I addressed everyone to calm them down. "Everyone, please calm down. This baby being born is not Jack's child." "But Jack was there, right? The pregnant woman kept calling his name in pain." Everyone looked at me, confused. Jack was the most shocked of all. "Maria, how did you know that?" "Oh? So, you knew it too? That he wasn't your child?" When I pressed him, Jack covered his mouth with an awkward awe. "Why did you acknowledge him if you knew he wasn't yours? And you've been paying child support every month." Well, that's..." Jack, sweating on his forehead, was at a loss for words. "Acknowledgement? Child support? And yet he's not your child? Explain that properly." "Yeah. We can't accept this as it is." Everyone was accusing Jack in unison. But Jack himself couldn't seem to spit out the truth. My mother-in-law, unable to hold back any longer, prostrated herself in front of everyone, crying, "Everyone, I am so sorry. It was my fault for not raising him right." While sobbing, I rubbed her back with both hands. "No, it's not your fault. I am going to call someone who will testify now." "That's right, I forgot. I'm sorry for losing my composure." My mother-in-law raised her tearful face. Jack, sensing something was off, confronted me. "What's going on? What are you all planning?" "Quiet, Jack. This mess is your fault in the first place. Yes, even if the child isn't yours, the fact remains you cheated." The room fell silent at the in-laws' words. It was about time to make the call. I took out my phone and dialed someone. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Michael, who had been waiting nearby. Behind Michael was Jessica, carrying Ethan. When I let them into the living room, the relatives started murmuring. "Isn't that the pregnant woman from before?" "Yes, that's her. And this man, Michael, is the real father of the child." I introduced Michael to everyone as planned. Michael followed our plan perfectly, bringing Jessica with him. The plan was this. Michael went to Jessica and told her that Jack's family had found out about his secret child. He lied that Jack could no longer pay child support and was transferring custody to Michael. Believing this, Jessica would surely panic. So Michael said, "I can't suddenly become a father," and suggested they come to our house to discuss child support. Normally, a mistress wouldn't come to the house. But Jessica seemed desperate for money. Thinking Jack would help her, she came. Because Michael knew how Jessica would think, he brought her here as planned. As expected, Jessica yelled at Jack on seeing him. "What? You're not paying child support anymore? And even giving custody to this poor man is cruel." "What? I didn't say any of that." "Tricked you, Jessica." "What? It was a lie?" "Yes. The part about my wife finding out is true. That's why you had to come here. To pay for your cheating and tricking us into child support." "That's terrible. You tricked me." "But it's true that I, Jack's wife, found out. So, it was necessary for you to come here." to make amends for cheating and deceitfully taking child support. Hearing my words, Jessica's face gradually turned pale. It's not a lie. Ethan is definitely Jack's child. That's right. Ethan is my son, and I plan to make him my heir. Jack defended Jessica, saying that. But the relatives were not going to stay quiet about such a claim. What? You were planning to make someone else's child our heir? My father-in-law shouted in anger, and everyone else joined in with their complaints. In the midst of this, Jack boldly stated, Maria can't have children. I'll divorce her, the useless wife, and remarry Jessica, who gave birth to my heir, even if he's not my child. The room went silent for a moment. Then, my mother-in-law clung to Jack and said, How can you abandon Maria, who has devoted herself as our daughter-in-law? That's too much, Jack. I have no choice. Dad always wanted an heir. No, I won't accept it. Don't you realize how much Maria wanted a child? I knew she consulted you about it. And yet, what did you do? Told her to just do the housework, treating her like a mere housekeeper. I was moved to tears by my father-in-law's passionate defense. Why would Dad know all that? Did you snitch, Maria? Idiot. We live right next door. Everyone hears your voice. And I won't recognize that heir. Hearing this, Michael also spoke up to Jack. Jack. About this heir thing. There is evidence that Ethan isn't your child. Evidence? I hired a private investigator to look into it. Remember when you were at a bar, chatting happily with the woman sitting next to you? So what? At that time, you were sweating profusely, and that woman wiped your forehead with her handkerchief. Turns out, she was from the private investigation agency. When I went to Jessica's place, I secretly borrowed Ethan's pacifier and had a paternity test done with it. You realize now? You're not Ethan's father. And by the way, Ethan's blood type is AB, you should have known that since you were there. Maria, what's your husband's blood type? O type, so there's no way they can be related. Jack said he was a type when filing the acknowledgement, knowing Jessica is B type. For the record, I'm a type. With these facts revealed, Jack nearly broke into tears. I got tested. The results said it was highly unlikely for me to father a child. Hearing this unexpected fact from Jack, I couldn't hide my surprise. Why didn't you tell me earlier? We could have sought treatment. I was embarrassed. And with the neighbors watching, I couldn't go for treatment. So, I acknowledged Ethan. That's impossible now. Silently give back the custody to his real father, Michael. No! Stop it! Suddenly, Jessica, who had been silent, burst into tears. I wanted to bear Jack's child and become part of this family. I don't want this poor man. What? Who's poor? That's right. Michael isn't poor. Michael and I looked at Jessica as if mocking her. What are you talking about? Michael works at a small town factory with a low salary. Are you just pretending? At Jessica's loud voice, Ethan in her arms started crying. Michael quickly approached and embraced Ethan firmly. Poor thing. You're a mother, don't shout like that. There, good boy. As Michael soothed Ethan, the boy stopped crying and smiled. You can see Ethan knows his dad, even if they haven't lived together. And Jessica, Michael isn't just pretending. I handed Ethan to Michael, letting him explain further. I work at a subcontractor for my parents' company. What? What does that mean? Ever heard of M Corporation? Asked by Michael, Jessica opened her mouth in shock. That's the biggest local company. You mean you're related to that? That company is managed by my father. As his successor, I'm learning about the fieldwork at its subcontracting factory. Knowing this unexpected fact about Michael, Jessica was left gaping in surprise. Then, suddenly, she smiled happily and said, Yay! So Ethan's dad is going to be the company president? Then I'll be the president's wife someday. Jessica, thinking such convenient thoughts, snatched Ethan from me. Hugging him tightly, she said, Ethan will live with Dad from now on. No. I'll take Ethan, but I won't be with you. I'll raise him at my parents' home. That seemed only natural to me. However, Jessica, turning pale, desperately resisted. Why? I'm his mother. Why would you do that? Of course. You've been nothing but lies, chasing after men with money. How can anyone trust you? No, I won't lie anymore. Please. Let me stay with Ethan. He needs me. Jessica looked at Michael pleadingly. But Michael's decision was unwavering. Ethan was even trying to look away from Jessica. She no longer had the right to be a mother. Jessica. There's something you need to say first. You had an affair with your boss, and now his wife and relatives are here. Shouldn't you apologize? Well, that's... Jessica was at a loss, with the relatives watching. I seized the opportunity to confront her. Well, regardless of whose child it is, your affair with Jack is a fact. We'll be demanding proper compensation for that. No! I don't want to! What a shameless woman! Settle your dues properly! The relatives echoed the sentiment. And of course, Jack, you'll be paying compensation too. I looked sternly at Jack. Then, my father-in-law also spoke to Jack. Not just that. Having someone in our family causing such a scandal is a disgrace to us in the eyes of society. Therefore, Jack, you must leave our house. Yes, he's a disgrace to the family. Right. Leave now. The relatives' accusations made Jack shrink. Then, he looked at me with pleading eyes. Maria, I was wrong. I'll pay the compensation. Please help me. I was speechless at his pathetic state. But Jack, undeterred, continued. Wait, if I'm kicked out, you'll struggle too, right? So ask Dad to let me stay. He'll listen if you ask. No, that's not necessary. I'll also leave after divorcing you. I firmly responded. Feeling relieved. I couldn't help but notice Jack's bewildered expression. What are you talking about? How will you live if you leave? A housewife like you can't make it on her own. No, that's fine. Michael suddenly interjected, surprising Jack even more. Jack, didn't you know? Maria was the secretary to the president of my company before she got married. My dad still laments losing her. She was the best secretary he ever had. So, after the divorce, she'll work for us again. Yes, I had been the secretary to the president of M Corporation before getting married. Jack, who showed no interest in my job at the matchmaking meeting, had no idea. Michael never showed his face at the company when I was working there, so we didn't recognize each other. That's why when I first met Michael, his name sounded familiar, like I had heard it somewhere before. That's the situation, Jack. So please, divorce me. Maria was such a good daughter-in-law, but I understand. Miyoshi's president is a good acquaintance of mine, so we'll likely keep in touch with Maria. Yes, I want to keep in touch with Maria too. Thank you. I hope to continue our relationship. Tears in my eyes, I clasped hands with my in-laws. Then, Michael left with Ethan. Jessica stayed behind for negotiations on compensation. The same was true for Jack. We couldn't just let him leave without discussing compensation and property division, which lasted until morning. As a result of the discussions, we split the marital assets and Jack paid me a compensation for his infidelity. And so, Jack was disowned by his in-laws. Having never lived outside his family's property, Jack struggled even with the moving arrangements. Furthermore, his workplace's boss was acquainted with my former father-in-law. The rumor of his affair with Jessica, his subordinate, spread quickly. Needless to say, his colleagues' attitudes towards him changed for the worse. Jessica resigned early and returned to her parents' home. However, it turned out that her father, who also knew my former father-in-law, was furious about her affair with her boss and making another man acknowledge a child born from another relationship, and quickly kicked her out. Now, after paying me the compensation, Jessica is said to be working at a nightclub, her savings depleted. All this information came from my former father-in-law, with whom I still keep in contact. I was again amazed by the extent of his connections. Eventually, Jack, too, resigned from his job after much personal turmoil. He has since gone somewhere to look for work, but I have no idea where. As for me, I was rehired by M Corporation and am working as the president's secretary. Michael is still at the subcontracting factory. He says he wants to stay at his familiar workplace while Ethan is still a preschooler, ready to rush over if anything happens. Truly, he's a great hands-on dad. I had wanted children myself, but now I'm so fulfilled with my job, I think I'm okay without getting married again. However, about a year later, after Ethan started attending daycare, Michael was set to join the parent company. At first, he would be a trainee. Then one day, to my surprise, Michael proposed to me. I was genuinely shocked by the suddenness. Really? There's quite an age gap between us, are you sure? When I asked, Michael responded with a smile. I've decided ever since you got divorced. Ethan is attached to you, and besides, my dad says it has to be Maria. I know I'm younger, but please, will you marry me? Moved by Michael's sincerity, I was drawn to him. And so, we got married. Now, it's Michael, Ethan, and the new life growing inside me, a child from Michael and me. We're building a happy family together. Thank you for today. I'll let you know once we've decided the wedding date. Today was a special day. My son Bob came over to announce his engagement. Bob and my husband Henry had already stepped outside, so I was about to follow them. That's when Bob's fiancée, Michelle, placed her hand on my shoulder, leaned in close, and said, "Sorry, but you won't have a seat at our wedding." What? I couldn't grasp the meaning behind Michelle's words. Well, you're not really Bob's blood relative, right? So, you're basically a stranger. It'd be embarrassing if you came. Michelle whispered this in my ear and then slightly pushed me away. Taken aback, I couldn't react in time and fell down. As I sat there, stunned and speechless, Michelle looked down at me with cold eyes. That look struck an indescribable fear in me. The word housekeeper, which she had once hurled at me when she visited our home, flashed through my mind. It wasn't a misunderstanding after all. I was at a loss for how to respond to Michelle's malice. I see. Trying to contain my humiliation, I murmured. Right. A housekeeper should live just like that. I had no choice but to accept Michelle's demand not to attend the wedding. But on the day of the wedding. What do you think you're doing? Don't mess with me. Michelle would come to regret her words to me. I am Sally. After graduating from college, I started working at a company. Just an ordinary office worker, but I had a hobby of drawing illustrations. Initially, I began drawing casually, but as it turned out, people liked my work, so I continued. And it was through these illustrations that I met Henry. He resonated with my art. As we grew closer, I began to consider marrying him. However, we were both hesitant to express these feelings. The reason was Henry's past. He was divorced and had a son, Bob, from his previous marriage. That fact puts a brake on our emotions. But Henry opened up to me. He told me about his divorce due to his first wife's infidelity and his intention to raise Bob alone. But then he fell in love with me. After revealing everything, Henry proposed to me. Moved by his sincerity, I accepted his proposal. However, Bob was initially wary of me. I decided to take things slow until he could accept me. My efforts paid off, and Bob eventually warmed up to me, leading to my marriage with Henry. The three of us then began our life together. It was tough balancing work and family, but with Henry's help in household chores, I was able to keep my job and continue drawing. Time flies. Before I knew it, 20 years had passed since our marriage. Bob graduated from college and left home for work. Henry and I felt a mix of pride and loneliness. With more time on my hands, I devoted myself more to my illustration hobby. Then one day, Bob called. "It's been a while. Are you free now?" Oh, Bob. What's up? Are you doing okay? How's work? I was delighted to hear from him after so long. Nothing much. I'm coming home this weekend. Bob's tone was curt. I felt something was off but thought he must be tired from work. Oh? I should prepare a meal. Anything you'd like to eat? Just hand the phone to Dad. Bob sounded a bit irritated. As if he didn't want to talk to me. Though hurt, I passed the phone to Henry. Bob wants to talk to you. Henry took the call and started chatting with Bob, laughing loudly. Watching them, I felt a sense of alienation. After a short conversation, Henry hung up and turned to me with a smile. Bob's bringing his girlfriend home. His girlfriend? I was surprised and exclaimed loudly. Yeah. Seems like he's thinking about marriage. Henry continued, looking happy. Yet, I couldn't shake off a feeling of gloom. Bob's behavior somehow nagged at me. Henry noticed something was off and looked at me with concern. What's wrong? You seem down. Is something bothering you? No, it's just. I felt like Bob was a bit cold towards me. I tried to sound cheerful, not wanting to worry Henry. Henry sighed after hearing this. Well, it can't be helped. He must have been embarrassed to tell you about bringing his girlfriend home. That's gotta be it. I hope so. I agreed with Henry, not wanting to think about anything else. But the unease that had started to spread in my mind only grew with each passing day. And finally, the day arrived. I was restless all morning, cleaning the house and getting myself ready. Henry was also unusually unsettled. As we were in this state, the doorbell rang. We hurried to the front door and welcomed Bob and his fiancée inside. Bob had matured quite a bit since I last saw him. But my attention was drawn to the woman standing beside him. She was a beautiful woman with short hair and distinctive facial features. Stunning enough to be a celebrity. I was momentarily overwhelmed by her presence. This is Michelle, my fiancée. Hello. I'm Michelle, Bob's fiancée. She said, giving a smile. Then she looked at me and gave a sly smile. Hey, Bob, this is. Yeah. She's the housekeeper I told you about. I was shocked at Bob's words. But just then, a truck passed by the house, and I couldn't hear him clearly. I looked at Henry, feeling anxious, and he seemed puzzled too. It seemed like he had heard something. Before I could clarify, Bob and Michelle had already headed to the living room. I reluctantly followed them to the living room and asked them to sit on the sofa. While preparing coffee and snacks in the kitchen, I mulled over Bob's words. He definitely called me a housekeeper. But that couldn't be true. After all, I raised Bob for 20 years. We might not be related by blood. But I gave him my love and care. It had to be a misunderstanding. I tried to convince myself, but the doubt lingered, especially after the recent phone call. However, I didn't want to confront him and create a hostile atmosphere, so I deliberately avoided the topic. I brought the tea and snacks to the living room, pretending to be calm. We then chatted about various things. Bob and Michelle met at work and started dating. To my surprise, Michelle was the daughter of a well-known toy company's president. I had met her once at work. When I mentioned this to Michelle, she responded indifferently. But apart from that, the conversation was lively and enjoyable. Then the topic shifted to their wedding. A wedding, huh? Must be a grand affair. Yes, indeed. My father is really excited about it. I bet. Michelle, you're so beautiful, you'll look stunning in a wedding dress. Instead of responding, Michelle just turned to me and smirked. Seeing her twisted smile, I felt an indescribable discomfort. She was looking down on me. I realized that instantly. But Henry seemed genuinely happy. I forced a smile, not wanting to ruin the moment. All I wanted was to keep the peace. About an hour later, they said they were leaving. Thank you for today. We'll let you know when we've decided the wedding date. We talked about this as we headed to the front door. Michelle went to the bathroom, so Bob and Henry went outside first. As I was about to go out, Michelle came out of the bathroom and approached me. She put her hand on my shoulder and leaned in close. Sorry, but you won't have a seat at our wedding. What? What do you mean? I didn't understand Michelle's intention. Because you're not really Bob's blood relative, right? So, you're practically a stranger. It'd be embarrassing if you came. Michelle whispered this and then lightly pushed me away. I was so taken aback that I fell down. Michelle looked down at me with cold eyes as I sat there, stunned and speechless. I felt an indescribable fear when I saw her eyes. As someone who's never been confrontational, I didn't know how to respond to Michelle's malice. I see. I muttered quietly, struggling to contain my humiliation. That's right. A housekeeper should live just like that. Michelle said with a triumphant laugh and left. I couldn't move for a while, feeling as heavy as lead and on the verge of breaking down in tears. But I knew everyone was waiting outside. I couldn't keep them waiting. Dragging myself, I made my way to the door. Henry came in as the door opened. Bob and Michelle have already left. But I'm surprised, Bob dating a girl like her. Henry said, laughing loudly. But I couldn't share his mood. The thought of what might happen to me after their marriage made me feel sick. Yes, it's really great. I managed to reply, turning my face away from Henry. Sally? What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Henry looked at me, puzzled. I quickly made up an excuse. Yes, I guess I'm just a little tired from all the tension this morning. That's understandable. No point in staying here. Let's go to the living room. I'll give you a shoulder rub. Henry said, gently guiding me to the living room. Touched by Henry's kindness, I finally broke down in tears. My crying didn't just stop, it became more intense. I collapsed at the entrance to the living room and sobbed uncontrollably. Hey, Sally. What happened? Henry was bewildered, pacing around me. But he seemed to understand that this wasn't tears of joy. It's okay to cry now, you know. Nobody's watching. It's okay. It's okay. Henry said, gently patting my back. After a while, when I had calmed down, I told Henry everything. How Michelle acted condescendingly. And told me not to come to the wedding because I was a stranger. Henry listened in silence. When I finished, he crossed his arms, deep in thought. So, that's it. I thought I heard Bob calling you a housekeeper, but I dismissed it as a misunderstanding. Henry sighed heavily. I'm really sorry I didn't notice. It's not your fault. And there's no reason for anyone to call me a housekeeper. That's what bothers me. Bob wouldn't say something like that. Sally, you've been a great mother to him. Something's definitely off. Thank you. Just hearing you say that means a lot to me. Henry stood by my side. And that alone lightened my heart. Anyway, there's no use thinking about it here. Let's visit Bob on our next day off and ask what he means. But will he even agree to meet us? We can use the wedding as an excuse or anything. I'll contact him, Sally, don't worry. 2 weeks later, we took the opportunity when Michelle was out to visit Bob's house. Welcome. Didn't expect you to actually come. Could have just called. Bob seemed slightly displeased. Still, he let us in. Once inside, Henry immediately confronted Bob. We're here because, when you were at our house, you called Sally a housekeeper. What did you mean by that? What, that's it? Bob replied, sounding annoyed. What do you mean that's it? That's terrible, no matter how you look at it. I was angered by Bob's callous attitude. That's right. Sally's been like a mother to you. She may not be related by blood, but she's undoubtedly family. So what? I can say whatever I want. What's it to you? Ruining my day off. It's not okay. I'm telling you it's wrong to treat your mother like that. Bob glared at me fiercely upon hearing my words. Shut up. You're just a housekeeper. Just be quiet and listen to what I say. Henry and Bob started arguing intensely following those words. However, I remained surprisingly calm. Something about Bob's behavior was off. He had never called me a housekeeper in all our years together. It seemed like Michelle must have influenced him. Bob, did Michelle say something to you? That's right. I turned around in shock to find Michelle standing there. She had been in the house all along. But I'm not to blame. You brainwashed Bob. Michelle shouted at me, pointing her finger. What are you talking about? That's not true. I retorted, recalling everything I had done for Bob. I raised him. And there was no reason for Michelle to accuse me of brainwashing. But Michelle continued her assault. But you also spent time drawing illustrations, didn't you? Isn't that odd? Normally, there's no time for such things when raising a child. That's because I helped with the housework. There's nothing wrong with that. Henry defended me. No, now that I think about it, it's weird. You say you're his mother, but you never really looked after me. I felt like my head was going to explode. Hearing such things from Bob was almost too much to bear. Anyway, you have no blood relation or love for him. Just having someone like you in the family makes me sick. Michelle sneered with a twisted face. If you hate it so much, then don't marry him. But I love Bob. Honestly, I don't need poor people like you. I'm just greeting you formally for appearances. Henry slammed his hand on the table upon hearing this. Enough. How much more do you need to insult us? Bob, don't marry this woman. However, Bob remained cool. Dad, you still don't get it. You don't have a say in this. Understand? That's right. Listen, my father has connections in various industries. If you try to break off the marriage, I can ruin you socially. Got it? Michelle smirked, just like before. So, just obey us. Then maybe you'll get some scraps. That should be enough for poor people. That's how it is. Now leave. We left, feeling an indescribable humiliation. I could hear Henry grinding his teeth. One last thing, Bob. Do you really want to marry her? Of course. After a moment of silence, he suddenly stood up. Fine, do what you want. Sally, let's go. Henry left without waiting for my reply. I followed without a word. Michelle and Bob's laughter stabbed me in the back as I left. We didn't speak on the way home. That night, Henry apologized to me. I'm really sorry. This is all my fault. Henry repeatedly apologized to me. Don't be silly. It's not your fault. No need to apologize. I've been thinking. I should have faced Bob properly when we got divorced. Henry looked pained. But I didn't have the capacity back then. I must have made him suffer without knowing. But there's no point in saying that now. Maybe, but I can't stand him calling you a housekeeper. I confided my feelings about Michelle. I can't forgive what Michelle said. But Bob wants to marry her. I respect that. Henry nodded in agreement. Me too. Maybe we haven't really expressed our true feelings to each other. Is there anything we can do? I'll try to convince him. We can't let this continue. Henry then made efforts to change Bob's mind whenever he could. But as long as Michelle was there, it was futile resistance. I became so distressed that I even called a close relative for advice. But nothing was resolved, and the day before the wedding arrived. Naturally, my name wasn't on the guest list. Sally, I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough. It's okay. It's what Bob wants, no matter the form. I'll watch over him from afar, even if they call me a housekeeper. I was sincere. This was my role in life. Henry held my hand with teary eyes. Having him by my side was enough. I genuinely felt that way. On the day of the wedding, I drove Henry to the venue. He looked sorry until the end, but got out and headed to the ceremony. I decided to stay nearby, at least. So, I parked my car in a parking lot not too far from the venue and turned off the engine. Inside the quiet car, I reflected on the time I spent living with Bob. Regardless of what Bob says, that time is irreplaceable to me. I wondered how he was doing now. Perhaps the ceremony had already started. I closed my eyes, imagining the scene at the venue. Suddenly, my phone rang in the quiet car. I looked and saw it was Henry. Surprised, I answered the call. "What's going on?" "Something is wrong." Henry sounded panicked. In the background, I could hear a commotion. "What do you mean something's wrong?" As I asked, Henry began explaining the situation at the venue. When Henry arrived at the wedding venue, there were few people around. But no more guests appeared as time passed. Then Josh, Michelle's father, approached Henry, wondering why the guests hadn't arrived. Bob and Michelle also hurriedly asked Henry for an explanation. "But I don't know anything." "Sally, do you know anything?" I could faintly hear Michelle's voice in the background, seemingly asking to put the phone on speaker mode. Suddenly, the noisy voices came through the phone. I talked about Michelle to our relatives. Everyone listened intently. "What do you mean? What did you explain?" "Everything. So, maybe all the relatives thought you were a stranger and decided not to attend." "Don't play dumb." Michelle sounded furious over the phone. Then Josh intervened. "Michelle, what is this all about? Isn't Bob's mother not here? Who's talking right now?" Both fell silent. "I'm Bob's mother. It seems Michelle thinks I'm a stranger." My words enraged Michelle. "Don't get cocky, you housekeeper. You poor person." After her outburst, she gasped. "Michelle, what did you just say?" Josh's roar was so loud it almost broke my phone. He began lecturing Michelle right there. It became clear I was nearby from Henry's explanation. "Sally, I'm sorry. Could you come here? It's too much to ask over the phone." "Okay, I'll be right there." I started the car and headed towards the venue. On the way, I felt a mix of excitement and fear. Arriving at the venue, I saw a sparse crowd of guests watching the commotion from a distance. I made my way through to the group. Josh was still angry. Michelle, in a beautiful dress, was crying, while Henry and Bob looked helpless. Josh shook my hand when he noticed me. "You must be Sally." "I'm Josh. I'm terribly sorry for my daughter's behavior." "It's okay." "I can't. I wasn't informed about you. I believed everything Michelle said and didn't even greet you." Josh seemed genuinely remorseful. He apologized to both Henry and me. And we accepted his apology. "Could we pretend this never happened?" "Are you suggesting calling off the engagement?" "Yes. I can't let them continue after such disrespect." "Josh, your sentiment is appreciated, but it's not our decision. It's up to them." "Right. Michelle, did you hear that? The engagement is off." But Michelle and Bob wouldn't accept it easily. They argued with Josh, who fought back. Henry joined in, unusually angry. It must have been really bothering him since the other day. I couldn't intervene or even wanted to. During the argument, it became clear why Michelle looked down on me. She found out I drew illustrations, just like her, and felt jealous knowing I was more popular. Being pampered as a CEO's daughter, she couldn't stand not getting her way. She used Bob's past to brainwash him into thinking I was the villain. Michelle's outburst during the argument made Henry and Josh even more agitated. Bob desperately tried to salvage the situation. "Please, don't make a mess of this." "Shut up. Enough is enough. What will happen to me if I can't marry? I can't focus on work without a housekeeper like Dad." "Wait, you're calling me the housekeeper?" Michelle furiously confronted Bob, who looked like he regretted his words. I found the situation so absurd that I burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" Michelle snapped, advancing on me and grabbing my collar. A staff member, seeing this, intervened. I'm sorry, but please stop this commotion here. It's affecting the reputation of our venue. We came back to our senses at those words. And the wedding was promptly called off. We apologized to the guests for wasting their time and for the cancellation. Surprisingly, everyone seemed amused by the spectacle and no one was angry. Amidst the hostile atmosphere, the gathering dispersed. Later, Henry, Josh, and I met again to apologize for our children's misconduct. I'm truly sorry. Since he didn't have a mother, I may have spoiled him to compensate. I should have faced him more when we divorced. As for the wedding costs, I will cover them all. That's not right. We share the responsibility. Let's split the costs. All right, I understand. You are honorable people. Thank you. And Sally, is this your illustration? Josh showed me a drawing. It's definitely something I drew. Yes, that's mine. I've been interested in your work for some time. Really? Thank you. I replied, genuinely surprised. So, I'd like to use it in our company, if that's okay with you? I'd be honored. I replied, though a bit hesitant, wondering if this was some sort of atonement. Josh seemed to read my mind and smiled. This is strictly business, not atonement for what happened. After hearing that, I finally felt convinced. It was an offer from the leading company in the industry. There was no reason to refuse. Thank you very much. Please go ahead. That's great, isn't it? It's really good that you kept at it. Henry said with a kind smile. Henry paid the wedding expenses up front, which Bob would repay in installments. Freed from Michelle's influence, Bob gradually came to his senses and sincerely apologized to me. Michelle, apparently, quit her job after the wedding fiasco was witnessed by friends and colleagues. For someone with high pride like her, becoming a laughingstock was unbearable. Josh also seemed to be having a tough time with her, but that was their family's issue. My illustration gained more attention than expected and was successfully commercialized by Josh's company. It became so popular that it was constantly sold out. With numerous illustration requests coming in, I decided to quit my job and focus solely on my art. Henry fully supported this decision. It's amazing how things work out. What once seemed like a disaster turned out well in the end. Now, I'm just enjoying my days drawing illustrations and living with Henry. My name is Jessica Morgan, I'm 36 years old. I've been married for 17 years. I met my current husband, Daniel Morgan, at my first job. He was a new employee and he came on strong from the start. To be honest, he wasn't my type, but I decided to date him anyway. As time went on, Daniel cornered me into a situation where I had no choice but to marry him, even getting his father to plead with me. He's 30, drifting aimlessly. If he settles down, he'll change. He's going to inherit my business someday. What do you say? Eventually, I gave in and married Daniel. Soon after our marriage, I got pregnant. A year later, our son, Tyler, was born. My mother-in-law became like a real mother to me, taking care of everything. I was expecting the usual mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issues after getting married, but my mother-in-law was different. She took great care of her grandson, Tyler. We rented an apartment just a few minutes' walk from her place. Moreover, the apartment was owned by my father-in-law, so we lived there for free. I was blessed in many ways. However, Daniel's negative traits slowly became more evident. His nights out became more extravagant, involving gambling, women, and alcohol. My father-in-law was soft on Daniel, paying him a hefty salary that didn't match his work and letting him do whatever he wanted with the family credit card. I wasn't struggling for money, but life was getting uncertain just a year into our marriage. Yet, my mother-in-law was always there to help with childcare and lend an ear to my complaints. Without her, I couldn't have continued with this marriage. But after 17 years of marriage, a decisive event occurred between me and Daniel. Is Dad not coming home again tonight? Tyler started high school this year. He attends a prestigious private high school. He often said, "Why did you marry such a man, Mom? All he does at home is drink and read the horse racing news. I can't see what you saw in him." The fact that I couldn't immediately answer him was telling. "But if you and Dad get a divorce, won't it be hard for Tyler?" "Why would it be hard? I'm all for it, actually. Grandma thinks the same. Keeping up appearances for Dad and just enduring it is so outdated. You're still in your 30s, Mom. You should enjoy your life more." When did Tyler become so grown up? He was becoming my sole reason to live. That's what I thought. I wanted Tyler to become a worthy heir and take away Daniel's position and honor. Well, we do live a normal life thanks to Dad's family, though. It's Dad's money that's making him arrogant. The women who flock to him are only after his money, right? He'll only realize how lonely he is when he's penniless. Daniel never helped with parenting, nor did I ever see him have a good conversation with Tyler. It's no wonder Tyler didn't warm up to a father like that. They might as well have been strangers. It's natural that their relationship turned into aversion. Speaking of which, I've been feeling unwell lately. Probably due to the stress from Daniel. I'm in my 40s now, I can't stay healthy forever. Thinking it was about time, I decided to go to the hospital the next day. I had Tyler at 19, and among my mom friends, I was the young one, but maybe my body is telling the truth. I was speechless at what the doctor said. "You might have breast cancer, so please stay in the hospital for tests." Breast cancer? Why me? The first person I called was my mother-in-law. On the verge of panicking, my mother-in-law said she would stay with me in the hospital. By then, I knew no words could reassure me. The next day, after Tyler went to school as usual, I headed to the hospital for my admission. My steps were heavy. Daniel didn't come home last night either. After years of marriage, I could tell he was seeing someone specific. Thanks to my father-in-law, I got a private room in the hospital. My mother-in-law was there before me, and I almost cried when I saw her face. "Did you tell Daniel and Tyler about the breast cancer tests?" "No, not yet. Daniel hasn't been home much lately anyway. But I plan to tell him once the test results are out." "Let's do this, Jessica. Tell Daniel you only have 3 months to live. It'll be a good lesson for him. If he thinks you're dying, maybe he'll finally appreciate you. Otherwise, he'll never change." As his mother, I feel so sorry for this. I thought it was a pretty good plan. It was a lie. But it might reveal Daniel's true nature. Unless you say your condition's worsening, Daniel won't even bother to visit the hospital. I'll exaggerate a bit. I wondered what Daniel's reaction would be. He might be a little shaken and come to visit. I fell asleep in the hospital bed with a sliver of hope. The next day, after hearing from his mother, Daniel did come to visit. But it was far from what I expected. "I sold the house and am going on a trip with my lover. See ya, useless woman." His words were shocking. He wanted me gone. Daniel left the hospital without waiting for my response. I lay there, speechless. What was the point of our marriage? Was it all just for appearances? I felt more emptiness than anger. But my mother-in-law was different. She was shaking with rage. "Don't worry, leave it to me." She seemed to have something planned. I found out what it was the following week. I was about to be discharged after completing all the tests. That day, Tyler came to visit with his grandmother. Suddenly, the door burst open and Daniel stumbled in, looking disheveled. We all sensed something was wrong instantly. Daniel's hair was a mess, and he looked unclean. He threw a large carry-on bag and stood there, excited but weak. "Mom! Look what you've done! Do you have any idea what I went through to get here?" "What are you talking about?" My mother-in-law played dumb. It seemed things went exactly as she planned. "Dad smells. Didn't you take a shower? Weren't you supposed to go on a trip? You made a mess preparing for it." That's right, Daniel was going on a trip with his mistress. Taking advantage of Mom being in the hospital to go on a trip with a mistress? He's the worst. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was right to discuss mistresses and such in front of high schooler Tyler. It must be quite raw for him at this sensitive age.
Shut up! And who stopped the family credit card, Mom? Why would you do that? Because of you, I was embarrassed.
The money from the family credit card is there because your father worked for it. It's not a magic card for you to use at your whim.
I'll never forgive this. This is the first time I've felt such humiliation.
Daniel, getting emotional, began to explain what had happened. When he heard I only had 3 months to live, Daniel was genuinely happy, thinking he could avoid the hassle of divorce. It was because he had a woman he loved. The woman was Amber Williams, a hostess at the club Daniel often visited. Daniel had been pursuing her for a year before she agreed to date him. That's why Daniel was so infatuated with Amber. He had even rented an apartment for Amber to have their rendezvous anytime they wanted. The apartment was owned by Daniel's father, so there was no rent to pay. Amber was a very demanding woman. Her whims, 22 years younger than Daniel, must have seemed adorable to him. I could easily imagine Daniel proudly buying her whatever she wanted with the family credit card. Daniel wanted Amber all to himself, so he asked her to quit her job. But Amber's response was, "Then spend more money on me. If you can support me with the same amount I earn at the club, I'll quit. I want to live a luxurious life and have lots of things I want. Your money, Mr. Morgan, is nowhere near enough." And she showed no signs of quitting. Desperate for a large sum of money, Daniel had made this request to his father.
"Dad, isn't it about time you retire?
You're over 70 now, and I bet your energy's not what it used to be. You might not notice, but you've been forgetful lately, and it's affecting the business. You wouldn't want our real estate reputation to suffer, would you? I've been watching you work up close, so why not let me take over?" But Daniel's father knew better. Of course, he did. He had raised Daniel and seen him up close more than anyone. He knew that if he left the company to Daniel, it would collapse in no time. He saw right through Daniel's plan to sell all his apartments for a quick fortune. His father was wise and had been in business for years, with a steady monthly income from the apartment rentals. But Daniel preferred the gamble over stability, ready to plunge in headfirst. "I'm still fit to work. As long as I can see, I won't let Daniel do as he pleases. Haven't I given you enough money? I'm just worried about you, Dad. You have to drive around for showings, right? But you know how accidents with elderly drivers are on the rise? Maybe it's time to give up your license and retire, enjoy yourself." I couldn't believe he could say such things so lightheartedly. In a way, I respected that. In the end, without a fortune, Daniel kept going to the club where Amber worked every day. Even if he got Amber, he was just another customer to her. Daniel started to panic. I didn't know this, but he had apparently consulted with his father and mother-in-law about wanting to divorce me. He wanted to divorce me and remarry Amber. Perhaps because he hadn't forgotten the favor of asking me to marry into their family, his father opposed the divorce. His mother thought that divorce might be better for me, but she couldn't agree with the reason for it. Daniel was desperately pleading, but Amber had no intention of marrying him at all. It should have been obvious, but Daniel convinced himself that not divorcing me was the reason Amber wouldn't marry him. Then Amber made the biggest request she ever had. She wanted to open her own club. At her current club, Amber was getting older. And probably realized she couldn't compete with the younger girls anymore. So, she thought of topping that by opening her own club. It didn't have to be big. As long as she could work the way she wanted and make a profit with a good team, she'd be thrilled. Without any guilt, Amber said, "Hey, Mr. Morgan, I want my own club. Look, I checked out some real estate today and found a great place." She showed Daniel the property details. Despite working in real estate for years, Daniel didn't know much about the market or the details. He hadn't been serious about his job. "We need to pay the down payment quickly before someone else snatches it up. It's hard to find such good conditions. The real estate agent said it's a real find. So, please, can you pay the down payment?" Daniel was troubled. His available funds were limited. But he couldn't let go of Amber just like that. Desperately, he tapped into the company's money. He knew his father would find out eventually. But at that moment, being cut off by Amber was scarier than anything his father might do. Amber started preparing for her club, overjoyed. Daniel began to seriously consider marrying Amber. She was relying on him, needed him. Daniel's desire to marry her grew stronger. How could he bring up the divorce? He seemed to have thought about it, but it wasn't my fault. I had been devoted to Daniel all this time. Not working, gambling, constantly cheating, all the bad things were on Daniel's side. His parents were against divorce and remarriage too. Then came my terminal illness diagnosis. For Daniel, it must have been an unexpected boon. He declared his trip with Amber without any regard for me. He talked about selling the house, but the apartment we lived in belonged to his father. It was in his father's name. So, he gave up on selling it. First, he would fulfill his long-held wish to travel to a tropical island with Amber. Right after receiving my terminal diagnosis from his mother, Daniel arranged for hotels and plane tickets. Then he came to my hospital room and scornfully called me a useless woman. The trip with Amber was to Hawaii. As soon as they arrived at the hotel, Amber said, "First, I want to go shopping." To her, shopping was the only purpose. That's when the biggest incident happened. Amber picked out several designer items, and when Daniel tried to pay, the clerk acted strangely. The card wasn't working. That shouldn't be possible. The family card had no spending limit. Daniel panicked. Amber's mood worsened rapidly. When he contacted the card company, they said the family card had been suspended. Daniel must have turned pale.
"Sorry, there's been some mistake and the card isn't working." "What? That's not what you said. You told me I could buy anything I wanted, that's why I came. How are we supposed to spend the next 3 days? Do you have any cash on you?" "No, I've always just used the family card, so I don't carry cash." "That's the worst. I'll call Dad and get it sorted out, so please cheer up."
Amber, ignoring Daniel, went back to the hotel alone. Daniel, in a fit of anger, called his father-in-law. But there was no answer.
"What's going on? Making me look like a fool."
Even after returning to the hotel, Amber remained upset and wouldn't speak to Daniel. Reluctantly, she had to use her card to pay for things, while Daniel couldn't even buy food or leave the hotel. He was just stuck in the hotel room, unable to do anything despite being in Hawaii. Daniel's resentment towards his mother-in-law grew. She was the only one who would have stopped the card. Just when his marriage to Amber was becoming a reality, it all fell apart. What was the point of all he had done for Amber? This must have been a significant blow to him, and humiliating.
"Mr. Morgan, just to confirm, there's no problem with my club, right? You said, I have plenty of money. Leave it to me, so I've been moving forward with the opening. I've even made the invitations and most of the preparations are done. It's too late to back out now."
The first words he heard from her were so cutting.
"Of course, it's fine. It was Amber's dream, after all. I'm sorry, Amber, for this boring trip."
"You have her plane tickets back, right?
"And the hotel is paid for?"
You're not expecting me to pay, are you?"
"The plane and hotel are already taken care of. Listen, I'll definitely pay you back when we get back to New York. Can you lend me some money? I can't even buy a snack. I'm so hungry."
"What?"
"I'm barely managing as it is. I don't have a cent to lend you. I had planned to do all sorts of sightseeing, and we can't even go to the beach. What's the point of coming to Hawaii? Sorry, but I've seen Mr. Morgan's limits. I can't see a future with you anymore."
Then came another silent period. It lasted until they arrived in New York, and they went their separate ways at the airport. Daniel hadn't eaten or drunk anything for 3 days and nights, and was at his limit. But he didn't even have enough money for the train fare home from the airport. With heavy steps, dragging his carry-on, he walked and walked. And finally, he arrived at my hospital room, looking disheveled. He blamed everything on the family card being blocked, attacking his mother-in-law. It must have been a huge success in her eyes.
Daniel, compared to what you've done to Jessica, this is still not enough. It's unprecedented for a husband to go on a trip with his mistress as soon as his longtime wife gets a terminal illness diagnosis. I'm cutting ties with you. I care about Jessica much more than my own son.
Humph.
Even if you say that, Mom, what about Dad? He's always been on my side, no matter what. Hey!
A sharp voice rang out, and my father-in-law entered.
I've heard everything. I'm disowning you. It's my fault for spoiling you. You're going to pay back every penny you took from the company.
I might have heard such harsh words and seen such a stern face from my father-in-law for the first time.
You're also fired from the company, so don't bother coming back. And leave the apartment you're living in. You need to start from scratch and make your own way.
For Daniel, who had been soaking in a warm bath for 48 years, a harsh life was surely waiting.
Shut up! Shut up! Fine. It works out for me anyway. I wanted to divorce Jessica. Now I can finally remarry the young and cute Amber. As for work, once Amber opens her store, we can live off its earnings.
His voice trembled with desperate bravado.
Excuse me for a moment.
My mother-in-law left the room briefly and returned with Amber, Daniel's mistress.
Amber! Why are you here?
I called her.
What's going on? Mr. Morgan said he had something to discuss, so I came, but...
No, I didn't contact her.
Mom, did you call her?
Stop interfering, seriously, you never get it. Bringing a mistress to his wife's hospital room, talk about a mismatch. This was my first time meeting Amber, and she looked just like Daniel's type. He wanted submissiveness from his wife but preferred flashy, extroverted women as mistresses. That hasn't changed since the old days.
Amber, what you've done is unforgivable. You knew Daniel was married and still had an affair with him, didn't you?
We will claim alimony as our rightful due. And just so you know, I've already spoken to a lawyer.
What? I'm not Mr. Morgan's mistress or anything.
We haven't even been intimate. Whether that was a lie or the truth, it was her word against his, impossible to prove. Maybe Amber was just saying that to escape blame.
Really? Right, Mr. Morgan?
Daniel's small, rigid reaction made me think it might be true.
Was he just financially supporting her in hopes of a physical relationship? It was so pitiful it was almost laughable. Actually, Mr. Morgan and I aren't even dating, let alone having an affair. I'm troubled by these accusations.
So it was just one-sided feelings from Daniel. Was this a so-called sugar daddy situation?
No, Amber, remember what you said. If I gave money for the store, we'd be together. Mr. Morgan only paid the down payment, right? You never brought the rest of the money despite my reminders. So I used all my savings. I don't need a man like you anymore. Bye, useless man. Wait, Amber!
Watching Daniel desperately cling to a young woman was pathetic. Tyler couldn't help but blurt out.
Ew, that's gross.
As Amber tried to leave the room, it wasn't Daniel, but my mother-in-law who grabbed her arm.
Just a moment, we're not done talking.
What now, seriously, give me a break.
I've told you, Mr. Morgan and I are nothing. You seem to know nothing.
What strong card did my mother-in-law hold? She had been making moves I didn't know about.
You have a boyfriend, don't you? So what? Why do I have to tell you that? It's none of your business.
Daniel reacted to her answer.
Amber, you had a boyfriend? You never told me that. Were you bringing him to the apartment I rented for you?
Daniel, be quiet.
Amber, you're being deceived by that boyfriend.
What is this conversation turning into? The story was jumping all over, hard to follow.
Huh? What are you talking about, old lady? I had a detective look into you and Daniel through my lawyer. You gave your store's startup money to your boyfriend, right? He's run off with it. What? No way. My boyfriend and I have promised to marry. We were planning a lavish wedding with the profits from the successful store. Don't make up lies just because you don't like me.
If you think it's a lie, try calling him now. I bet you won't be able to reach him.
That's impossible.
Amber pulled out her smartphone with a smirk. No ringtone. Probably blocked. Amber repeatedly put the phone to her ear. Growing increasingly anxious, clearly visible to anyone watching.
Why is this happening?
See? He's not answering, is he? There are even more bad rumors about your boyfriend. You've been completely fooled. It's really laughable. Well done. It was a splendid counterattack by my mother-in-law. I felt relieved too. Amber was trembling. Understandably so. She had been swindled out of a large sum of money by a boyfriend she trusted. Her dream of opening her own shop would likely be dashed now. I felt a bit sorry for her. It's not my place to say, but Amber, you have terrible luck with men.
Still, neither Daniel nor Amber, you haven't apologized to Jessica at all.
What kind of nerve do you have?
Well, never mind, my punishment ends here.
So, what will you do, Jessica? Yes.
Divorce is the only option.
I answered immediately, intending it to be the final blow. After all, Daniel had wanted to divorce me, so he should agree quickly. It seemed Daniel never expected me to be the one to initiate the divorce. When faced with a situation where someone takes a superior stance, his fragile pride quickly turned to anger.
Fine, I'll divorce you. But don't expect any support for your future life. You've enjoyed luxury only because of me. You'll realize that when I'm gone. Don't come crawling back. Be quiet. You'll understand what it means, Daniel. Your father just said it, you're disowned, for real. Your father and I will take responsibility for Jessica and Tyler, so don't worry. Are you sure about this, Jessica? Are you really okay with it?
Yes, of course. By useless, penniless man. I felt a sense of refreshment. Afterward, Daniel ended up shouldering $400,000, including alimony and debts to his parents. He would be under their constant watch until he repaid everything. A few days later, my test results came in. Fortunately, I didn't have breast cancer. But I couldn't let my guard down. I decided to have regular breast cancer screenings and comprehensive health checkups every year. Life with Tyler began after my discharge from the hospital. It was so relaxing and peaceful. Thinking about Daniel, who hardly ever came home, and knowing he would never return, brought a real sense of relief. Our divorce didn't happen immediately. Because Daniel kept making a fuss. My in-laws, realizing it wasn't good for Daniel to continue like this, decided to disown him and cut off all communication. It was a tough punishment for him, but I knew my in-laws were worried sick about him. Sure enough, Daniel ended up begging his father for help. His father put him to work in a food service job to learn how to interact with people, to appreciate the value of money, and to toughen up. Daniel was now living in an apartment, undergoing the most challenging training of his life. Meanwhile, Tyler said to me, "Mom, I'll protect you from now on. You're not alone, and good things are sure to come." Hearing such a heartfelt line from Tyler almost brought me to tears. When had he become so strong and resilient? Tyler was my reason to live. I am grateful to Daniel for giving me Tyler. And for introducing me to my father-in-law and mother-in-law. That much, I do thank Daniel for.
You're ugly, but you're still her sister, so celebrate her wedding. The groom is your ex-fiancé, but don't worry about it.
Oliver's spiteful voice, intent on mocking me, made me feel sick. If this were the old me, I would have been saddened and depressed by Oliver's belittling words. But I'm no longer someone who gets pushed around by him. Huh? I don't have a sister, remember? What? It was my turn to get back at Oliver, and I began to calmly plan my next move. My name is Hannah Smith, 28 years old. I've been dating Oliver Jones, who is a year older than me, for 4 years. I used to often see Oliver around our shared neighborhood at local stores. Oliver was loud when he talked, so I could hear him even from a distance. I never talked to him, but I knew about him one-sidedly. However, my first impression of Oliver wasn't good. Because most of the conversations I overheard were his boastful talks, making me think he was someone who looked down on others. Gradually, as I saw Oliver's confident demeanor whenever I saw him, I started feeling more confident myself. He became a source of energy for me, making me feel like I could live more confidently. Then, one day at a restaurant, I ended up sitting next to him by chance. We talked a little and exchanged contact information since we lived nearby. We started messaging each other, greeted each other when we saw each other outside, and even went out for meals together. As I got to know him better, I found out that Oliver was not only bright and energetic but also serious and hardworking. I was drawn to him, and it turned out the feeling was mutual. Oliver confessed his feelings, and we started dating.
Hannah, I want to be with you from now on. I think we can be a great couple, supporting each other.
When I started dating Oliver, he mentioned wanting to marry someday, so I was thinking it was about time to get married. However, Oliver didn't seem very enthusiastic about marriage. We had been living together for about 2 years and knew we could make it work, so I started to think seriously about marriage. Well, don't you think we should start thinking about the future? We're almost 30, after all. We'd been together for 4 years, so I wanted to have a serious talk about marriage. Hoping to get married before turning 30. I mustered the courage to bring it up several times with Oliver. What's the rush? Let's talk about it some other time. But every time I tried to bring it up, Oliver was non-committal, always putting it off. I was getting anxious about our relationship going nowhere when one day, Oliver said he needed to talk. We sat facing each other in the living room. I thought he had finally decided to propose and listened nervously, but Oliver said something unexpected. Let's break up. I can't imagine a life married to you. What? I was shocked by his sudden talk of breaking up. But Oliver, looking exasperated at my reaction, pressed on. I'm just fed up with you. Plus, I hate being rushed into marriage. So let's just break up quickly. I couldn't help but respond emotionally.
What? You are the one who talked about marrying someday. I've been waiting all this time.
The shock was immense since I had assumed Oliver was serious about marriage when we decided to live together. I loved him, so his words hurt me deeply. I was also angry that he had kept me waiting for 4 years if he had no intention of marrying. As I tearfully responded, Oliver coldly dismissed me.
Enough of that. Just break up and get out of the house.
You need to leave. He treated me as the bad one, looking annoyed at my surprise. His cold attitude made me sad, but I realized I couldn't do it anymore with him. His heart was no longer with me. And anything I said would be pointless. Fine, I understand. I'll move out soon. I managed to calm my feelings and decided to end the relationship. Since tomorrow is a day off, I was planning to prepare for moving out, but then Oliver said something unbelievable.
What? You're still planning to stay here? We've broken up. Get out now.
I told Oliver that it was impossible to leave today because I needed to prepare, but he wouldn't listen and seemed about to explode in anger. I was furious at how Oliver was being selfish and not considering my situation, but I didn't want to exhaust myself any further. All right, I'll pack my things right now.
Seriously, you're such a hassle. You should have said that from the start.
Despite the sadness I felt from Oliver's unhidden annoyance, I left the room to quickly pack my belongings. I didn't want to come back to this house ever again, and I knew Oliver wouldn't help me with my things. Fortunately, I didn't have many belongings, so I decided to take only what was absolutely necessary and leave. Thinking about the sudden breakup and what was to come, I felt like crying again but managed to hold back the tears and continued preparing. From another room, I could hear Oliver talking on the phone. His voice was loud.
Finally broke up with her. I can't wait to see you. Once she's gone, let's live together.
Hearing this conversation, I realized Oliver had been cheating on me, which explained the abrupt breakup. I didn't know how long the affair had been going on, but knowing he cheated and hearing him badmouth me made me even sadder. With just the essentials, I left the house as if escaping. Afterward, I threw myself into work to distract myself from the sadness. I'm not good at handling stress, so I kept busy to avoid dwelling on the past. I chose a new place to live in an area where I was unlikely to run into Oliver, and at first, I was solely focused on getting used to living alone. Although I sometimes cried thinking about the past, I eventually adjusted and settled in. Then, I received a call from Oliver's number. After the breakup, I had deleted all his contact details and changed my own phone number and email. So I was surprised to see a familiar number. I didn't answer the call, wondering how Oliver knew my new contact information. I felt a bit scared at this moment and tried to convince myself it was just a coincidence. But then I thought, maybe he regrets breaking up with me. This idea gave me a bit of hope, so I decided that if he called again, I would answer the phone. The next day, Oliver called, so I answered. "Hello, what do you want?" I was nervous inside but tried to remain calm. Wondering why he would go to the trouble of finding my new contact details, I listened, but Oliver said something unexpected. "Hey, you must be struggling since we broke up, right? Thought I'd want to get back together?" Then, Oliver started the conversation by mocking and laughing at me. It seemed he had called just to ridicule me, assuming I was struggling after our breakup. Oliver knew I was emotionally vulnerable. During our relationship, he had always been considerate and supportive. But now he called me to harass me. I was saddened by his behavior, thinking he wanted to see me cry. Holding back tears, I said, "Is that all?" Then I'm hanging up. I refused to let Oliver see me upset and quickly ended the call. Unfortunately, this reopened old wounds, and I cried again. Following this, Oliver started calling more frequently, and when I didn't answer, he began sending emails filled with derogatory remarks about our breakup. I blocked him, but it brought me down. Not only from Oliver, but I also started receiving silent calls from unknown numbers. No matter how many times I blocked them, the calls continued from different numbers. It was creepy and only increased my anxiety. I started feeling paranoid, as if someone was watching me when I was outside. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but I couldn't shake off the feeling, and it made me despise myself. As the days went on, I became sleepless from fear and anxiety, which began to affect my work, leading to a vicious cycle of illness and absence. Unfortunately, this led to causing trouble at work, taking more days off, and eventually being fired. The company I worked for was where I had started as a part-timer and worked my way up to a full-time position. After failing to secure a job post-community college, I juggled multiple part-time jobs, aiming for a full-time position. The president of this company was a woman named Isabella, a year younger than me. Isabella had started her own business while in college and, though still a small company, it was gradually growing. As a hard worker and a beautiful woman, she was someone I admired as a fellow woman. I respected Isabella and was overjoyed when she offered me a full-time position. Therefore, when she said she couldn't employ me any longer due to my mistakes and continuous absences, I couldn't say anything. "We're still a small company, so we can't cover for you any further. I'll give you some severance pay, but I'm sorry, you'll have to leave." Recently, after receiving several reprimands for my mistakes, hearing these words made my blood run cold. Leaving here meant a tougher life ahead with no other job in sight. I wanted to make amends, but recalling my past failures, I resigned myself to the fact that it was impossible. "I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused," I managed to say without breaking into tears and returned home, dazed. I had some savings and severance pay, but it wasn't much. I needed to find another job quickly, or I'd be in a precarious situation. Remembering how I had failed miserably in job hunting before, I felt nothing but anxiety about securing a proper job. This worry left me feeling so drained that I couldn't muster the energy to do anything, and the stress I had been carrying only made things worse. For days, I was just depressed at home, unable to do anything, with a growing sense of urgency and anxiety. Then, another blow came. I received a wedding invitation from Oliver. I was shocked that Oliver knew my address, which I hadn't shared, and even after checking multiple times, it was definitely from him. Dizzy with disbelief at Oliver's audacity, I looked at the invitation, feeling even more disheartened. He probably wanted to humiliate me thoroughly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered sending an invitation to an ex-fiancée he had broken up with. The fact that he quickly decided to marry his affair partner, after being non-committal and evasive about marrying me, hurt even more. Thinking about Oliver made tears well up uncontrollably. I wondered what all the time we had spent together meant and felt an overwhelming mix of sadness and frustration. At that moment, my phone rang. Considering the creepy calls I had been receiving, I was hesitant but relieved to see a familiar name. It was a friend from high school, with whom I hadn't been in contact recently due to living in different places and work. I hadn't reached out after breaking up with Oliver, not wanting her to know my situation. Just receiving a call from a close friend made me feel better. And I picked up the phone. My friend immediately noticed something was wrong and expressed concern. It had been so long since someone had spoken to me so kindly. Relieved, I opened up about everything. After talking for about 30 minutes, I felt lighter thanks to my friend's support. Sorry for suddenly venting. I apologized, feeling bad for burdening her right after she reached out. My friend reassured me not to worry and then shared the reason for her call, revealing a shocking truth. The next day, I received a call from an unknown number and, to my surprise, it was Oliver. He had gone through the trouble of using a different phone after I had blocked his number.
You're such a hassle. Just pick up the phone already. So, I'm getting married soon, you got the invitation, right?
Oliver complained as soon as I answered and confirmed if I had received the invitation. Yes, I received it, but what are you thinking? I asked him why he would send an invitation to an ex-girlfriend he had broken up with. Ignoring my question, Oliver began talking about his fiancée, who turned out to be the president of the company where I had recently worked. The name on the invitation was Isabella, my former boss, and someone I had admired, but now I knew she was Oliver's affair partner. From Oliver's past conversations, it was likely that Isabella knew I was dating him. I had even told Isabella that I was considering marrying him while I worked there. After my plans to become a full-time housewife post-marriage were dashed. I felt infuriated knowing Isabella was having an affair with Oliver despite being aware of my situation. Oblivious to my feelings, Oliver proudly boasted about becoming the vice president after marriage. He even compared me to Isabella, belittling me in the process. His insults about my looks and income fueled my anger more than sadness.
I'll show you my big day. You may be ugly, but as a big sister, you should celebrate your sister's wedding. Don't mind that the groom is your ex-fiancé,
Oliver said in a mocking tone. His attitude and intentions angered me, but his unexpected words left me perplexed. What? I don't have a sister? What? I'm an only child, so I couldn't understand why he said that. Thinking I was either bluffing or lying, Oliver responded with disbelief.
Cut the lies. Just come to the wedding.
Without waiting for my response, he selfishly ended the call. His self-centered nature was as evident as ever. Having already emotionally moved on from Oliver, I decided to take revenge at the unavoidable wedding. He might think he can corner me and laugh, but I was determined not to let that happen. I began preparing for the wedding day. The wedding, thanks to Isabella being a company president, was extravagant. Held in a luxury hotel, the venue was filled with friends, business associates, and executives, making the spacious hall seem crowded. The ceremony had already been conducted privately on another day, and today's gathering seemed primarily for their introduction as a couple. As the newlyweds greeted everyone, a video and photos from their wedding were shown on a screen, and the reception began. The ceremony was splendid, and the food was delicious. Although I planned revenge, I genuinely enjoyed the event. Meanwhile, the bride and groom approached me, smiling. As I opened my mouth to greet them, they started their taunts.
Long time no see. Still looking as gloomy as ever. This place really doesn't suit you,
Oliver remarked, blatantly insulting me. Isabella, without reprimanding Oliver, joined in.
I got married first, sorry about that.
Knowing my past plans to marry, she seemed to take pride in beating me to it, laughing at me triumphantly. When I learned Isabella was Oliver's affair partner, it all made sense why he knew my contact details and address. I had updated my information at the company, so she must have told Oliver, who then harassed me with silent calls. All the while, Isabella pretended to be concerned about my well-being, secretly mocking me. Oliver probably thought I still harbored feelings for him, which is why he was so eager to contact and harass me. But I never expected them to show such blatant malice at their wedding. Internally, I smirked, finding their overt hostility made my planned revenge easier. Seeing me silent, they continued to ridicule me. "You are a nuisance at work, huh? No one to clean up your messes now, living a life of poverty, right?" Oliver scrutinized me as if assessing my worth, taking pleasure in looking down on me.
"Did you find a job after that? It must be tough with your health issues, Hannah. But we had no choice but to let you go, sorry,"
Isabella added, clearly pleased that Oliver chose her and that my life was seemingly in shambles. In the past, I might have believed their harsh words, blaming myself and feeling inferior. But now, having gained confidence and moved past my self-doubt, I retorted confidently,
"Actually, I found a job right away. My work is going well, and my health has improved. There's nothing to worry about."
Indeed, my job hunt post-resignation was surprisingly successful, unlike my previous experiences. Perhaps my assertive approach during interviews made the difference, as opposed to my anxious demeanor during student job hunts. Working in a supportive environment with kind colleagues, I no longer suffered health issues and was thriving at work. Their surprised faces at my calm response only boosted my spirit. I continued assertively,
"I never imagined you two were having an affair, but birds of a feather flock together, I guess."
Initially, I was overcome with sadness, but gradually, anger towards Oliver for his infidelity, and towards Isabella for dating him despite knowing about me grew. I had planned to confront them, as I genuinely believed they deserved each other. Realizing Oliver's true nature, I felt fortunate to have parted ways. My confident smile must have thrown them off.
"What do you mean by being so arrogant? How rude."
Surprised that I had actually talked back, both of them frowned, apparently not expecting me to respond in such a manner. Their frustration was palpable, almost reaching a point of aggression. At that moment, someone intervened between us. "Calm down. You still lash out when things don't go your way." My friend Hannah stepped in to shield me, intervening in our conversation. I was relieved by her timely intervention, especially given their seemingly violent demeanor. Both Oliver and Isabella were taken aback.
"Sis? What are you doing here? You're her sister?"
It seemed that Oliver had indeed misunderstood the situation. Indeed, Hannah and I share the same last and first names, though spelled differently. When I first met someone with the same surname in high school, I was surprised to discover we even shared the same first name. Moreover, we both had lost our parents during our middle school years, so we quickly bonded over our shared anxieties and sorrows. Given our similar circumstances, we encouraged each other to persevere. Being of the same age, Oliver mistakenly thought I was Isabella's sister just by hearing my name. While the two were still in shock, I moved to execute the plan Hannah and I had decided over the phone. I connected my smartphone to the projector prepared for the wedding, and started displaying the evidence of the couple's infidelity and misdeeds on the screen, complete with audio, photos, and videos. The shocking content stirred a buzz throughout the venue.
"What is this? Harassment at a time like this?"
They tried to stop it but failed as the attendees, noticing their panic, became even more agitated. Hannah knew about my relationship. I had shared photos and Oliver's name with her, so when her sister mentioned her fiancé, Hannah realized Oliver had been cheating. Hannah knew her sister Isabella had a selfish nature, always wanting what belonged to others. Hannah had worked hard to earn money so that her sister wouldn't have to struggle, but Isabella used it as if it was her due. She had tolerated Isabella's whims, thinking it was bearable since they were sisters, but realizing Isabella was causing trouble for others, Hannah contacted me for confirmation. Hearing my complaints, Hannah decided she couldn't forgive them and suggested revenge. We both agreed and began investigating them, only to discover their cheating was just the tip of the iceberg. They were embezzling company funds. Further investigation revealed they were bad-mouthing me and Hannah. Especially Hannah, who was working right after high school graduation for Isabella's sake. Without Hannah's work, their future living expenses and Isabella's tuition fees would have been uncertain. Yet, Isabella mocked Hannah's efforts.
Embarrassing to have a sister with only a high school education working a bottom-tier job.
Claiming she's doing it for me, such a nuisance. Shocked by her sister's ingratitude, Hannah resolved not to forgive her. We meticulously gathered evidence to unleash at the wedding. We also discovered they had badmouthed not only us but also their business partners, whose voices were also playing in the background. Their misdemeanors now in the open, the guests looked on with disapproval, and the couple frantically tried to excuse themselves.
Stop this now! Ruining my wedding like this, what are you thinking? This is my big day, you should be helping me, not this.
They protested, but the guests converged on them, forcing them to face the consequences. The wedding then turned into chaos, far from a celebration. Subsequently, the wedding was cancelled, and everyone left, leaving the distraught couple behind. Due to the presence of many guests, the misdeeds of the two became widely known. This led to business partners severing ties, rapidly deteriorating the company's performance. Who would want to associate with individuals guilty of infidelity, embezzlement, and such distasteful behavior? The loss of business was inevitable. Furthermore, an employee exposed detailed evidence of the embezzlement, leading to their arrest. Though their detention was brief, by the time they were released, their company had already collapsed. For the two who loved bragging about their income and titles, and enjoyed spending money, the outcome must be tough. They no longer have any allies, having ridiculed others for so long. They had to pay a hefty cancellation fee for the wedding that was halted midway and are now living in poverty. As for me, I'm currently sharing a room with Hannah and living a happy life. Hannah was worried about how depressed I became after breaking up with Oliver and losing my job. She suggested we live together so she could help me immediately if something happened. Thanks to her, I didn't become pessimistic, and now Hannah and I live together as if we are real sisters, peacefully and amicably. I cherish these tranquil days that I haven't experienced since losing my parents.
I'm fine with anything. Just choose what you like. That kind of makes it difficult though.
My husband and I were at a meeting for our wedding planning. We had registered our marriage, but hadn't had a ceremony yet. I was excitedly listening to the plans, but his attitude quickly dampened my mood.
How about we just go with this one? What do you mean this one? I mean, let's just choose this middle plan. Didn't you say we could go for something a bit nicer?
After all, it was Tom who had suggested we have a ceremony. I couldn't believe his attitude now. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, our wedding planner made a suggestion.
In that case, we could lower the grade of the meal, but increase the number of dress changes.
She explained an alternative plan politely, but Tom seemed uninterested.
Let's go with that, okay?
Yeah. I almost sighed, but held it in. Suddenly, Tom stood up.
Where are you going? We're not done here.
I've had enough. I'm going home. With that, he left. As I stood up to follow my husband, someone grabbed my arm. Suddenly, I almost fell backwards in surprise.
What?
I turned around to see the planner with a serious look.
There's something important.
Huh? I was led to a different room. Although I was still worried about Tom who had left.
What's this about? It's hard to say, but your husband, Tom.
Her words made me collapse to my knees. At the same time, a fire of revenge against Tom was ignited. I'm Emily, an office worker. I'm 32 this year. I've been living a simple but happy life with my husband, Tom. Tom was my high school mate, and he left our hometown right after graduation. Emily, is that you? Long time no see.
Tom? When did you come back?
I just got back last week. We randomly met after work one day. Have you been here all this time? Why did you come back? There was a pause.
Just didn't fit in over there.
What's that supposed to mean? We started hanging out about once a week. We always had a good relationship, so it was fun. About 2 months after we reconnected. We were drinking after work when. Hey, why don't we live together?
What?
I just really enjoy being with you, Emily. Is that a no? I didn't hesitate to say yes. I had also started to feel like I wanted to be with him more. So, we quickly found a place and started living together. Looking forward to this.
Me too.
It was my first time living with someone, and I was a bit excited. It was fun, but something bothered me. I realized I didn't know what job Tom was doing. I had asked before.
My job? I'm helping out my friend. Really? Doing what? Various things. Hey, want to grab dinner? I know a great place. Sure.
I never got a straight answer about his job. And with work getting busier, I just forgot about it. A year passed. One day, when I came home from work.
Welcome back. Take a seat. What? Why?
As I sat down, following Tom's suggestion, I saw drinks and a lavish meal set up.
What's all this for? It's not my birthday.
Then, Tom pulled out a box from his pocket. My heart raced, thinking it might be what I suspected.
How about we get married? I think it's about time. I'm so happy. Yes, please.
However, this turned out to be a wrong choice for me. I was over the moon about the proposal. But then, Tom looked guilty.
What's wrong?
Can we wait to have the wedding ceremony? A wedding ceremony? Well, I'm not too fussed about it. We can think about it later.
Really? Thanks.
I was more thrilled about being Tom's wife than having a wedding. Eventually, we registered our marriage and we officially married. I was excited about our new married life. But then I noticed something off 2 weeks later.
I'm home. You're late.
Yeah, I just had some stuff to do. He seemed distant, not his usual self. And it wasn't just that. He was absent-minded and gave short responses to my attempts at conversation.
Are you listening?
Huh? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Maybe I'm just tired.
I'm gonna sleep first. Okay.
He went to the bedroom, seeming distracted. Then, I noticed a small pouch he left behind. Thinking he might need it, I took it to him.
You dropped this.
Upon seeing the pouch, Tom snatched it with an inhuman speed.
What the?
I was too shocked to move. He glared at me with a look I had never seen before. Instilling fear. You didn't look inside, did you?
Inside? No, I didn't.
Good. Thanks. He lay down again. Back in the living room, I couldn't stop thinking about the pouch. But after seeing that expression, I didn't have the courage to delve deeper. The next day, he acted like nothing happened. Hey, I'm gonna be late tonight.
What about dinner?
Don't need it. That night, Tom didn't come home even after midnight. I was about to sleep when I heard the front door and a thud. Rushing over, I found Tom collapsed.
Are you okay?
Huh? He was slurring his words, seemingly drunk. With a sweet, pungent smell around him. I managed to get him to the living room and gave him water. I had never seen him this bad, even when drunk. I considered calling an ambulance.
The pouch. What?
Pouch? He kept mumbling about the pouch. The same one from before. I searched my bag for it. As I was about to take it out, he suddenly shouted.
Hey! What are you doing?
Startled, I accidentally threw the pouch away.
What are you doing? I was just doing what Tom told me to. What? Don't just do things on your own.
I was getting irritated at being blamed unilaterally.
You said the pouch, right? What's even in it anyway? That's none of your business. If it's so important, why not lock it in a safe?
The next moment, I felt a sharp pain on my cheek. Confused, I touched my face and looked at Tom. His eyes were bloodshot.
It's because you meddle too much. If you do something like this again, it won't end here.
His intensity left me speechless. Tom stood up, staggering, and left the house. All I could do was rub the cheek he had hit. After that, Tom started coming home less. He would return just as I was leaving for work.
Off to work? See you later. You have the day off today?
Huh? Oh yeah, I'm off. He was invariably drunk. And he also had a strong, unfamiliar smell. It reminded me of something I couldn't quite place. Like a perfume, but I didn't know what it was at the time. Then one day, despite hardly having any proper conversations, Tom surprisingly suggested with a smile, "It's not really an apology for what happened, but how about we have the wedding ceremony?"
A ceremony?
Yeah, a wedding ceremony. We haven't had one, right?
Why all of a sudden?
I was wary since he had shown no signs of such a plan. Let's just do it. It'll be good, right?
Okay.
At that moment, I was afraid of what might happen if I refused. Then, let's go venue hunting this Sunday. I should have been happy, but Tom's sudden kindness and smiles left me unsure how to react. When Sunday came.
So, where are we going?
Just follow me. I followed Tom without knowing our destination until we arrived in front of a building adorned with wedding dresses.
Here?
Yeah, it's a nice place. Let's go in. Inside, various wedding dresses were displayed. Despite myself, I couldn't help but feel excited. A woman approached us. "May I assist you?"
Oh, well.
As I hesitated, Tom said, "Sure, we'd appreciate it." And she led us to a separate room to discuss ceremony plans. I was unsure about the plans, but Tom was chatting and smiling with the planner. Feeling irritated, I tried to involve him. "How about this one?"
Oh, that's nice. But I'd probably choose this one.
"But it's expensive."
Is it? Then maybe this middle plan.
I didn't expect much, but he actively shared his opinions. I thought maybe it could turn out to be a good wedding, but that day ended with just deciding the broad outlines. On the way home, Tom seemed in a good mood. Thinking it was a good time, I spoke to him.
About the wedding dress.
Yeah.
Which one do you think?
Yeah. But his responses were all non-committal. His earlier enthusiasm was gone.
Are you listening?
I asked a bit more firmly this time. Don't bother me now. I'm busy. He was just playing with his phone, not looking busy at all. Yet, he acted as if I was the one in the wrong. The word divorce started to cross my mind. I had always dreamed of a wedding, and I wanted to show my parents me in a wedding dress. I was torn between two thoughts, but Tom walking beside me probably wasn't thinking about any of this.
We have another meeting next week, you're coming, right?
Yeah, I'll be there. And so, back to the usual dreary life. I couldn't wait for the week to pass. One day, I felt ill and had to leave work early. All I wanted was to get home and lie down.
What? Why are you here?
That's my line.
What happened to work? I left early because I wasn't feeling well. You should have told me. I didn't expect you to be home.
Then, I noticed something. There were 2 cups on the table, which weren't there when I left in the morning.
Did someone come over?
Huh? No, nobody did.
But there are 2 cups there.
Tom looked like he got caught and seemed to be thinking of an excuse.
Oh, a colleague from work came over. But I thought you said no one came?
Tom, now cornered, seemed irritated.
I told you it was a colleague. Just drop it.
As I tried to push further, I felt dizzy, probably pushing myself too hard. You came back because you were sick, right? You should go to bed. Saying that, Tom carried me to the bedroom. I must have had a fever because as soon as I was in bed, I lost consciousness. What? When did I fall asleep? I checked my phone, and it was past 1 a.m. I had been asleep for nearly 6 hours. I went to the living room, and Tom was there.
You sure you're okay to be up?
Yeah.
Don't push yourself. Want something to eat?
After our earlier conversation, I didn't know what to say. Then Tom spoke kindly, as if nothing had happened.
I'm sorry about earlier. Work hasn't been going well. But the person who came really was a colleague. I want you to believe that.
He seemed like a completely different person. Okay, I understand. I forgave him. Maybe I shouldn't have. But being treated kindly felt good. I didn't have much experience in love, and Tom meant so much to me.
Maybe you should go back to sleep? It's still the middle of the night.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.
I went back to bed and fell asleep quickly. That idiot, she doesn't suspect a thing. Such a fool. I thought I heard Tom talking to someone, but my consciousness quickly faded.
We have the final meeting for the wedding this Sunday. You're okay with that, right?
Yeah, I'm fine. When we went for the final meeting.
Isn't it the usual person? I'm sorry, the person who was handling your case is off today. Nancy, will be taking care of you.
Okay, thank you. I glanced at Tom, and he seemed a bit grumpy.
Everything all right?
Yeah. Let's just get this over with. We received the rundown, but Tom was just playing with his phone, not really participating in the conversation. I was starting to question the purpose of the wedding itself. During the final stages of the meeting, the planner asked, "So, shall we proceed as planned?" "Yes, please go ahead." I turned to Tom for his agreement.
Is this okay?
Anything's fine by me. You decide.
What? That's not helpful.
My excitement while listening to the plans quickly faded.
How about we just go with something normal?
Normal?
What do you mean by normal?
You know, nothing too extravagant.
What? But we've already decided on the arrangements. Are you suggesting we change the plan now? You said before you didn't want anything expensive, right?
It was Tom who had first suggested having a ceremony. And I couldn't believe his attitude now. In the tense atmosphere, our planner, Nancy, suggested an alternative.
If it's okay, we can lower the meal grade and increase the number of dress changes.
She politely explained the options, but Tom showed no interest.
Let's go with that. That's okay, right?
Yeah. I almost sighed but held it in. Suddenly, Tom stood up.
Where are you going? We're not done here.
I've had enough.
I'm leaving first. Wait.
But Tom ignored me and left. What's going on now? I sighed and said, "Sorry, I'll bring him back." I stood up to follow him when Nancy grabbed my arm. Startled, I nearly fell backward.
What's?
I turned to see Nancy, who had been smiling earlier, now with a serious look.
There's something important. Important? What is it? We should talk in another room.
Intrigued and worried about Tom, I followed her to a private room. Nancy began to speak. Her expression was apologetic.
So, what's this about? It's difficult to say, but your husband seems to be up to no good. No good? Last week, during a dress fitting, I overheard him talking. I was curious and went to check.
Nancy hesitated. But I felt their courage and resolved myself to face what was coming.
Please tell me. I need to know.
Well, he was talking to one of our employees, Susan, who was your planner until last week.
What?
It seems their relationship isn't new. I even saw them kissing.
Huh?
I collapsed to my knees in shock.
Why?
I never thought he was cheating, especially not with our wedding planner.
Are you okay?
I'm okay, I said, as Nancy offered her hand. And that wasn't all. My thoughts turned to revenge.
Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do?
Revenge, of course. But don't worry, Nancy, I won't involve you. I hurried home. Called Tom, but he didn't answer. He wasn't home, so I waited. Then I found that pouch on the table.
This is my chance.
An hour later.
Why are you in such a rush?
Huh?
It's nothing.
He seemed restless, searching for something. I knew what it was.
Looking for this? You had it?
I was scared, but anger was stronger.
I know what this is. Nancy told me everything. Nancy? Who's that?
The planner today.
She heard you talking to Susan.
Heard what?
Everything. That you were kissing her, and planning to take the wedding money from me.
What Nancy told me earlier was that Tom and Susan were conspiring to steal money. Tom began to tremble.
So, it's out then. What are you laughing at? You can't escape from me now.
I grabbed my smartphone. Ready to call the police if needed.
Threatening me is useless now. Give me that phone.
No way.
Did you really think you could get away with this? Shut up. Hand it over.
Tom, at his wit's end, threw something at me. But fortunately missed. I called the police.
What are you doing?
I'm calling the police. You're the one who can't escape.
Maybe you should run?
Or do you want this?
Don't joke with me.
He tried to come at me, but stumbled in the mess he had made and fell. I seized the moment to lock myself in the bathroom. I barricaded myself in the bathroom and called the police.
Open up. Like I would.
Tom banged and kicked at the door, desperate to get in. I wasn't sure how long the bathroom would be safe. Curious, I checked the pouch's contents. I had been skeptical about Nancy's story. Inside, I found unfamiliar pills, along with a sweet smell. This confirmed the source of the smell I had noticed on Tom earlier. About 15 minutes later, the front door opened. The police had arrived.
What the hell? Get off me. Don't touch me.
Outside, there was a struggle between the police and Tom. Then, silence and a knock.
Are you okay?
Yes.
It's safe to come out now. We've got him.
I emerged to see Tom surrounded by police, looking defeated. I handed over the pouch to the police.
This is what he had.
Thank you. The police checked the contents and called someone. More officers arrived.
Is this definitely your husband's?
Absolutely. He always kept it close. In front of Tom, they investigated the pills.
You'll be under investigation for violation of drug laws.
Handcuffs clicked on Tom's wrists. I felt no sadness, only a sense of justice. But more than that, after being deceived all this time, I can't help but think he got what he deserved.
You've made my life hell. Remember this. To think you were such a scumbag. You belong behind bars. Just wait. I'll be back.
If you can. Tom was taken away by the police. I had been foolish not to act sooner. I couldn't help but think that I should have acted sooner. But now I feel liberated. There would be no wedding, but it was far better than continuing this life. I wonder what I should do next. Maybe start with a divorce. There's no time to dwell on sentimentality. There's still so much to do. Later, I headed to the police station. The police had contacted me for a precautionary test. Of course, the result was negative.
You can visit him if you want. What would you like to do? Please arrange it. Understood. We'll contact you later about the schedule.
I was a bit excited. I wanted to see what condition he was in after all this. A week later, I had the chance to face him. In the visiting room, Tom looked nothing like his former self, completely worn out.
Good to see you're doing well.
Does it look like it?
Why are you here?
Just to let you know.
We're in the process of getting a divorce.
What? Yes.
You were cheating, remember? Do you have proof? You'll see soon enough. That's all I wanted to say. Get out!
Leaving the visiting room, I couldn't help but laugh. To think he'd fallen so far due to drugs. Later, I learned from the police that the wedding planner, Susan, had been arrested. They found a similar pouch in her room. During the interrogation, she was quite talkative, admitting to being lured by Tom into using drugs and other details. She also confessed to the affair. The mystery of the 2 cups in my apartment was solved. It was her. Now to finalize the process, the request was accepted. Thanks to my lawyer, the divorce was finalized, and I was finally free. The apartment was under my name, so I canceled the lease and disposed of Tom's belongings. I'm considering moving. But before that, I have one more place to visit. Hello, Nancy. You are. Thank you for everything last time. It's all thanks to you. I didn't do much. You helped me a lot. And your husband? We're divorced. If I ever plan a wedding again, I'll come here. With that, I left the shop. I later found out that Tom had been arrested for drug-related issues even before coming back to me. Now, he's serving a sentence. I can't help but laugh thinking about it. He should stay in there for life. Now, I'm ready to start a new life in a new place. I'm alone, but not lonely. In fact, I'm quite excited about it.